This is a DMT trip report by Voyager, posted to arrowwood.org on June 27, 2016. I had been holding onto two small DMT rocks for a couple of months, waiting for the right moment to use them. The first two attempts had produced only faint electric tingles in my body and visuals that resembled a mild LSD or mushroom trip. My ego remained solid, my sense of self did not dissolve, and I never left the room where I tried to launch. Those experiences left me curious, but also a little disappointed. I wanted more. I wanted the kind of break that would push the boundaries of my mind, the kind that would make me feel that I was truly stepping outside of ordinary perception. The evening I chose for the new launch was quiet. My roommate Echo had a gig as a DJ that night, so the house was empty except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. After the sun set, I walked out to the backyard with a plan in mind. I had already strung a hammock between two sturdy oak trees, the rope taut enough to hold my weight without swaying too much. I placed 2 sticks of incense at the base of each tree, lighting them so that a thin orange glow rose from the embers and a sweet, resinous scent drifted through the air. The smell of the incense mixed with the damp earth and the faint perfume of night-blooming jasmine that grew near the fence. I settled into the hammock, pulling a blanket over my legs, and let the gentle creak of the rope become a metronome for my breathing. My intention for this session was simple. I wanted to see what lay beyond the veil of ordinary consciousness, to test the limits of my own mind, and perhaps to catch a glimpse of something that could not be described in words. I told myself that I would stay open, that I would observe whatever came without trying to control it. I also reminded myself that I was a truth seeker, that I was willing to face uncertainty in order to learn something about the fundamental nature of reality. I decided to use my Vapor Genie, a small portable vaporizer that I had used before for nicotine and for low-dose DMT. I placed the smaller rock, about 60 milligrams, directly onto the VG screen. The rock was a pale yellow-white crystal, almost translucent, and it seemed to catch the dim light from the incense. I tried to calm my mind by focusing on my breath, inhaling slowly through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, counting each breath. My thoughts kept drifting back to the impending trip. I thought about the previous attempts, about the electric sensations, about the fact that my ego had remained intact. I thought about the possibility that this time the experience could be far more intense. My heart began to beat faster. I could feel a thudding in my chest, a sense of nervous anticipation that made my throat feel a little dry. I lifted the VG to my face, the lighter in my other hand, and tried to draw a slow, steady stream of air through the device. The vaporizer resisted at first. The hot air seemed too thin, and my lungs protested, demanding more oxygen. I stopped mid-inhale, gasped for air, and then tried again. This time the crystal began to pop and hiss as it melted, turning into a thin vapor that smelled faintly of plastic and burnt sugar. I continued to draw on the pipe, but the hit felt weak, almost like a whisper. After about a minute of trying, I lay back in the hammock, feeling only a mild buzz, far less than what I had expected. Disappointment settled over me like a cool blanket. I reached for my glass pipe, packed a small amount of cannabis, and took a few tokes. The cannabis soothed the edge of my nerves, and soon I slipped into a light sleep, the hammock swaying gently with the night breeze. I slept for a couple of hours, dreaming of floating clouds and distant thunder. When I woke, the desire to try again burned brighter than before. I felt a renewed resolve, as if a part of me had been waiting for this moment. I went inside to examine the VG. The screen was coated with a black, gooey residue that had clogged the airflow. I removed the screen and saw that the rock had liquefied, running down the stem of the pipe. The crystal was gone, but the vaporizer was now dirty. I cleaned out the pipe, replaced the screen with a fresh one, and prepared a thin bed of cannabis in the bowl to catch any remaining liquid DMT. I then placed the larger rock, about 170 milligrams, on top of the cannabis. The rock was a deeper yellow, with a faint sheen that caught the dim kitchen light. At that moment, Echo returned from his DJ set. He was still wearing his headphones, his hair slightly disheveled, and he carried a bottle of water. I told him that I was preparing for a relaunch, and asked if he would stay as my guide. I had taken mushroom and LSD trips alone before, but something inside me told me that having a steady presence would be helpful. Echo nodded, set his water down, and sat on a folding chair facing the side of the hammock. The incense sticks glowed orange in the darkness, their smoke curling upward in lazy spirals. I settled back into the hammock, pulling the blanket higher over my shoulders. I held the VG and lighter up to my face once more. The nerves returned, this time sharper. My heart hammered harder, and I felt a desperate need for air. I forced myself to slow my breathing, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, counting each breath as if it were a mantra. I imagined myself as a rocket on a launch pad, the engines ready, the countdown ticking down. Echo looked at me, his eyes calm, and said, "See you in eternity," as I flicked the lighter and held the flame to the VG. The crystal began to pop again, a soft crackle that grew louder as the heat increased. This time the vapor was thicker, the scent stronger, a subtle plastic taste that I recognized from my earlier attempts. I inhaled the white vapor, feeling it fill my lungs, then exhaled slowly. The first hit gave me a faint electric buzz that traveled up my arms, a tingling that seemed to vibrate in my fingertips. I reached for the VG again for a second toke. The buzz grew louder, a low hum that resonated through my chest. My heart raced faster, the rhythm becoming almost a drumbeat in my ears. I took a third hit, the vapor denser this time, the plastic taste more pronounced. As I exhaled, I felt my body begin to dissolve into 1,000 tiny fragments, as if each cell were being pulled apart and scattered across an unseen void. My mind, which had been a solid block of thoughts, started to crumble, the edges blurring, the boundaries fading. I could sense the hammock beneath me, the blanket, the night air, but at the same time I felt as though I were floating far away, beyond the trees, beyond the house, beyond the world I knew. The electric buzz turned into a full-body vibration, a sensation that seemed to pulse in time with the beating of my heart. It was as if every nerve in my body had been turned into a tiny antenna, picking up some invisible signal. My breath became shallow, then deep, then shallow again, as if the air itself was changing its composition. I could hear the faint crackle of the incense, the distant chirp of a cricket, the rustle of leaves, but they seemed muffled, as if I were listening from behind a thick wall. My vision, which had been dim in the darkness, began to fill with a soft white light that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. The light was not harsh. It was gentle, like the glow of a candle seen through a frosted glass. It filled my field of view, yet it did not blind me. I could still make out the outline of the hammock, the silhouette of the trees against the night sky, but those shapes were now edged with a luminous halo. The light seemed to pulse in rhythm with the buzzing in my chest. I felt a sudden loss of self, a moment where the concept of why slipped away. It was not frightening. It was more like a door opening. In that instant, the buzzing stopped, replaced by a deep silence that was not the absence of sound, but a presence of something vast and still. The silence was thick, like the calm before a storm, but it held no tension. It was pure, unbroken, and it seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Even as the silence enveloped me, a faint awareness lingered, a sense that I was still there, still observing. The light remained, but now it was softer, more diffused, like sunrise filtered through a thin veil. I could feel the warmth of the blanket on my skin, cool night air brushing my face, yet those sensations were distant, as if I were watching them from a balcony rather than experiencing them directly. I opened my mind to whatever was happening, allowing the experience to unfold without trying to label it. The silence began to shift, a subtle ripple moving through the stillness like a stone dropped into a pond. The ripple grew, forming patterns that were both familiar and alien. I saw flashes of color, deep indigo, bright amber, soft teal, each one appearing for a heartbeat before dissolving back into the light. At this point, Echo's presence was still there, his chair a solid point in the periphery of my awareness. He did not speak, but his steady breathing served as an anchor. I could sense his calm, his steady heartbeat, and it helped keep me from drifting too far into the unknown. The combination of his quiet support and the gentle, pulsing light created a sense of safety, as if I were being guided through a tunnel that was both dark and illuminated at the same time. The vibration that had filled my body returned, but this time it felt more like a current flowing through a river, carrying me forward. My thoughts, which had been a jumble of words and images, now aligned into a single line of focus: the light, the silence, the vibration, and the presence of Echo. The line of focus was thin, yet it held everything together. I felt the first hint of movement away from the stillness, a subtle shift that suggested I was about to descend from the void into something else. The light began to flicker, the silence to thicken, and the vibration to rise. I could sense that I was on the edge of a new phase, that the experience was moving forward, but I did not know what lay ahead. The feeling was both exciting and unsettling, like standing at the brink of a cliff and feeling the wind rush past. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in the vast silence. I could feel the rhythm of my own blood, the rush of oxygen, the subtle taste of the vapor still lingering on my tongue. The blanket beneath me felt heavier, as if it were a shield against the unknown. The night air brushed my face, cool and refreshing, grounding me even as my mind floated. I breathed in deeply, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and exhaled, releasing a soft sigh that seemed to merge with the distant chirp of crickets. The moment stretched, the silence held, and the light pulsed in time with my breath. I sensed that the next breath would carry me deeper, that the next inhale would push me further into the unknown. I was ready. I felt the anticipation building, a mixture of curiosity, reverence, and a hint of fear. The experience had already taken me beyond the ordinary, and I could feel that the journey was only beginning. The light, the silence, the vibration, and echo's steady presence formed a fragile but solid platform from which I could step forward. I inhaled once more, feeling the vapor of the DMT still clinging to the back of my throat, and prepared myself for whatever would come next. I felt the vapor cling to the back of my throat, a thin, sweet-smelling film that seemed to pulse in time with the beat of my heart. I drew the breath in slowly, feeling the cool air rush past the lingering mist, and then I let the exhale slip out through my mouth, a soft sigh that mingled with the distant chirp of crickets. The light that had been humming at the edge of my vision began to grow brighter, as if it were answering the rhythm of my breathing. I sensed that the next breath would carry me deeper, that the next inhale would push me further into the unknown. I was ready. I felt the anticipation building, a mixture of curiosity, reverence, and a hint of fear.